So I'm told that we are now actually live. So once again, it's wonderful to say a very warm welcome to our App and Tech Talk Vector community. It's always a pleasure to interact with all of you listening in, literally from all over the world. Thank you for finding time to link in and share in the lessons. What a great group of people to interact with. I might just mention that apparently 609 of you registered to participate in this webinar. Typically, around 50% of the people who register actually attend. But even so, if we're 300 people, that still reflects strong interest. And we're very grateful for you taking the time to join us. I'm going to hand over to our APMEN Vector Control Working Group Chairman, Dr. Mohammed Mukhtar, to also welcome our audience. Dr. Mukhtar is head of the Directorate of Malaria Control in Pakistan and has worked in the field of medical entomology for more than 25 years. So thank you for opening this webinar, Dr. Mukhtar. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Liu, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining this. A very good day to you, respected vector control colleagues from the Asia Pacific region and across the world. A warm welcome to our APMEN Vector Control Working Group Tech Talk. Today, the topic has been decided is very important. That is the new development in the indoor residual spray. As a reminder that this series of ongoing Tech Talk is made possible by the Asia Pacific Malaria Elimination Network. And you may know that APMEN has three working groups: Vector Control Working Group, VIVEX Working Group, and Surveillance and Response Working Group. The primary objective of these working groups to provide the level best technical support to all 22 member states of the APMEN to achieve their ambitious their goal of malaria elimination in this region. Today, I have some exciting news for all of you that APMEN Vector Control Working Group very shortly going to establish three sub-thematic groups in the changing scenario of the malaria transmission, not only in this region but across the globe. These working groups, sub-working groups, are the climate change and environment, its impact on health. Second subgroup is the cross-border malaria transmission, and third one is very important, that the outdoor transmission. And very shortly, we will share the more detail with all of you and will request you, invite you to join these subgroups based on your expertise and background. Why we today select this important topic of the indoor residual spray? No doubt, the use of bed net is one of the best intervention globally, and very recently, last 2 months back, we have attained the figure of the 3 billion mosquito bed net distribution around the globe over the last 1 decade. However, there are certain scenarios, there are certain situations where the use of bed net is not an optimal choice for the control of vector-borne disease or vector of the public health importance. So we need to make sure that we keep some development in IRS, because the situation can change dramatically and very quickly, and we need to be prepared. Today, we have three very important presentations to give us some insight on the indoor residual spray situation from the various perspectives. And I hope you will find this very interesting, informative for all of you. So thank you very much for joining this important webinar. And so I request to join this Tech Talk to learn and leave this Tech Talk to serve your community. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining this. And over to Dr. Liu for further proceeding. Thank you, Dr. Liu, and thank you, all of you.
Wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for those words of introduction, explaining that background. Thank you so much, Dr. Mukhtar. So just some very quick comments about the webinar process. As mentioned, we have three presentations, and we extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. Inigo Garmendia, Dr. Mohammed Mukhtar, and Dr. Manuel Luberas for their time and willingness to participate in this webinar. I should mention Manuel is in a time zone where it's now pretty much approaching 2 a.m., 2 o'clock in the morning. So that shows professionalism and dedication, and I think on behalf of all of us, thank you so much, Manuel. The three presentations will be given back to back, and we will then have a joint Q&A session at the end, and we'll aim to finish the webinar after about 90 minutes. I'd like to invite you, our audience members, to please submit questions, but please insert your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, please. We'll only monitor the Q&A box for questions. And I suggest you precede your question with the name of the panel member you would like to respond to your question, if appropriate. So, for example, Dr. Garmendia, and then put your question in the Q&A box. After the final Q&A session, there's going to be a very short poll. It's quick, 1 minute of your time, but it helps us, and I'd be grateful if you can just quickly tick the boxes as appropriate. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on the Aurene website within a day or so. Details of the website will be made available on your screens. So, okay, let's move on to our first presentation, and it's going to be on the topic of development of new tools to enable more efficient IRS interventions by Dr. Inigo Garmendia. Inigo is the Public Health Product Manager for the Goisper Group. He's in charge of the research, development, and marketing of new spraying solutions to fight against vector-borne and other important diseases such as Ebola and cholera. Before leading the Public Health Department, Inigo spent 15 years as a product engineer developing more efficient new spraying solutions for different fields, such as in agriculture, gardening, industrial, and public health applications. Then after a successful technical career, Inigo now is in charge of the public health working teams with the objective to bring positive impacts to people's lives. Inigo believes that together is better. He's deeply convinced that collaboration is the most effective avenue to overcome the most difficult challenges and achieve the highest objectives. As a consequence, he collaborates closely with many important international organizations such as IVCC, PMI, WHO, UNICEF, MSF, Goodbye Malaria, IS Global, the Mentor Initiative, and several others, training their staff, giving technical support in the field, and creating new solutions from new ideas. So, Inigo, thank you for your time. We're grateful for you joining us. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Leo. Thank you for the nice introduction. And good morning and good afternoon and good night to all the audience attending the webinar from different parts of the world. I will share my screen to do the presentation.
That looks good, Inigo.
Yes, I'm trying to put it in the full screen. Sorry. Now.
Take your time. No panic.
You'll
You'll find it.
Sorry, I did it before, but I don't see the...
I know, just a few minutes ago, just before the webinar started, we went through this. That's Murphy's Law. It always happens. So that's fine.
Inigo, if I can, you may have a button on the taskbar that is keeping you from getting to the bottom of that screen.
I'm trying to get that button, but I cannot. Sorry, can you share the presentation there?
So, do you want to try press the button F5? It is short key for full screen mode. F5. Key F5.
But I have the top bar and the bottom bar that is not allowing me to click that.
No, it is on your laptop.
It's in keyboard.
Keyboard. on your keyboard. F5. Press F5.
F5.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
There's a useful lesson learned. Okay, over to you, Inigo. Please go ahead.
Okay, so
Well
thank
done.
you very much for attending this webinar. I am Inigo Garmendia, and it's a great pleasure to be here with all of you to present the job that we have done and the job we are doing to improve such an important intervention as IRS is to control so many vector-borne diseases. I work for Whisper Group, a specialist group of companies designing, manufacturing, and commercializing aerial and ground equipment all over the world for more than 60 years. And today, I will focus this presentation in the intense job we have been doing around IRS equipment because it is considered one of the most important and efficient interventions against many vector-borne diseases. 15 years ago, we created a devoted team to learn experiences from the field and develop new tools for IRS. And several years ago, we launched to the market the first spraying non-metallic, meeting the WHO specs for vector control equipment, and equipped with many new technical features to offer IRS operations one of the most robust, efficient, safe, light and comfortable, and easy to maintain sprayer. Thanks to using new materials and design solutions, this sprayer is corrosion, ultraviolet, pressure, and impact resistant, and it meets all the tests specified by WHO specification guidelines. It is also a very efficient sprayer because it's equipped with a control flow valve that keeps the spraying volume constant, reducing the insecticide deposit variation on the walls significantly. It is also equipped with IRS and larviciding nozzles that, thanks to the optimized design and new material selection, are more durable than metallic nozzles and offers better performance. And also is equipped with an innovative nozzle protector that avoids such an annoying thing as nozzle blockages in the field, protecting the nozzle from dirtiness. This sprayer is also the lightest and most comfortable sprayer for vector control. The weight of the tank is less than 3 kilograms, and it comes equipped with a double strap to easily carry the pump in your bag. It is also very easy to clean and maintain because this new design reduces the number of parts by 50%. And you don't need any expertise and or expensive tools to clean and do maintenance. But why more new tools? Why we should keep on working, developing new tools? Because based on our large experience in the field, we know that one of the most important objectives of any IRS intervention is to apply the correct dose of insecticide on the internal walls of the houses to be protected. With that purpose, thousands of operators are yearly trained to learn the correct spraying skills. However, these all operators find challenging to keep the correct spraying distance and speed when they move to the field because they don't have any guidance and spraying quality can be affected. So, which are the main factors affecting spraying quality? Factor one is that training is not easy because there are no good tools to teach, learn, and evaluate spraying techniques correctly. Factor two is that IRS in the field is not easy. Field working conditions are much more demanding than traditional outdoor training because of the darkness of the rooms, the obstacles that operators find inside, and sometimes the small size of the rooms. And the third factor is that supervision in the field is not easy. Why? Because it's not easy for a supervisor to find the operators in the field, and it's not possible to supervise all of them at the same time. So, is it possible to do a more effective and efficient IRS that could be done easier, better, and if possible, cheaper? In order to address these challenges, we started 5 years ago a project called IK SmartLight, together with IBCC and other partners. The objective was, one, to guide operators to spray at the correct distance and speed during their trainings and IRS operations. And two, to help supervisors to supervise and evaluate the daily performance of their operators easier, better, and quicker in terms of spraying quality and job quantity. So, after these 5 years, we have come up with a new solution that is a combination of 3 tools and that now is in the final stages of the validation phase. Now, I will explain what every tool does. The first tool is an electronic device that is equipped with a beeper that sounds every second to give an accurate time reference for spraying speed. That is also equipped with a laser that measures the spraying distance from the nozzle to the wall. And it is also equipped with a 3-color LEDs that it will be in green if the spraying distance is correct, 45 centimeters, correct dose. It will be in red if the spraying distance is farther than 50 centimeters, subdosing. And it will be in blue if the spraying distance is closer than 40 centimeters, overdosing. This electronic device, it will also be equipped with a switch button to count the number of rooms or houses sprayed per day, and with a fluid sensor to measure the spraying time of each operator and estimate the insecticide volume spread. The second tool is a smartphone app that will collect all data captured by the electronic device via Bluetooth and visualize the spraying results of the day. The app will show the spraying quality of the job done by the operator that day using a scale of 5 stars. In this case, the operator was only 20% of his time in the green correct range, so he got only 1 star. We can also know the error mode. This operator was most of his time 60% in blue, too close, overdosing. And in average, taking into account the distance measurements of the whole day, we can say that he had an average deviation of 26%, plus 26%. So there was a potential risk to overdose 26% more insecticide than requested. So with this tool, you can have a dialogue with the operator and try to improve for the next day. The app also shows the job quantity done by the operator. In this case, the operator sprayed a real spraying time of 1 hour and 5 minutes, and it estimates that he consumed 5.5 insecticide sackets and 41 insecticide liters. It also shows how many houses he sprayed and detailed information about how every house was spread, line by line. When that house was spread, the exact time, the spraying quality distance score, the deviation, how long or how much time he spent in every house real spraying, and how much liquid volume was spread. But then The third tool we have developed is a digital platform in the cloud for daily collection and monitoring of field spraying data by different management and supervision groups of the organization. All the information collected by the smartphone app are automatically transmitted via Wi-Fi mobile data to the cloud as soon as it is collected in the field. Then managers and different supervisor levels can access to the digital platform to check the collected information. The dashboard of the platform allows you to check the daily evolution of the main spraying parameters of the whole campaign. Line by line, you can see the result of the whole group day by day. For example, column 1, you can see number of IRS days, the exact date, number of operators spraying, spraying quality or distance score got by the whole team, average deviation of the whole team, number of houses sprayed per operator per day that day, number of insecticide sackets sprayed per operator per day, and if the daily targets of the operators as a group are met, the value will be highlighted in green. But if the daily target of the operators as a group is not met by far, the value will be highlighted in red. The platform also allows you to check spraying data of any individual operator by operator, and also visualize the evolution of any operator or any specific parameter during the whole campaign in a graph format. However, we are also aware that the daily jobs of supervisors don't allow them to have so much time to spend going to a platform and analyze so much data to take conclusions and then decisions to transmit to their operators' teams. So now we are developing a new functionality for the platform to produce automatic daily and weekly reports with the main information and conclusions that could be read in a few minutes by any supervisor and very quickly know what is going right and what should be improved or corrected. These reports will be automatically shared with the supervisors and management groups via email or WhatsApp. We have already done several field trials in different African countries, and these are the benefits that an IRS intervention can obtain by using these new tools. In a training scenario, it enhances and reduces training costs significantly because they need less training days. Only one day or a few hours is enough. Operators pick the principles of the spraying technique much better and quicker because they have the constant guidance of the device. In a field IRS scenario, it improves the spraying quality significantly by helping operators applying the correct dose on the walls, not more and not less, because it provides immediate feedback to spray operators under demanding working conditions like dark places with obstacles and small rooms. It can also reduce the insecticide cost by reducing the risk of insecticide overwaste and pilferage. And in a supervision and monitoring scenario, supervisors and operators can easily check their performance and correct any deviations quickly to meet the targets of the campaign, like IRS quality, coverage, and insecticide consumption. It can also reduce operational costs by optimizing operators' daily outputs, spraying more houses per day, and reducing the total days of the IRS campaign. So, we hope to finish the validation of the new tools very soon and to have the IKE Smart Light ready for the market by the second half of this year, and continue with our purpose to become your best partner to fight against vector-borne diseases. Thank you.
Inigo, that was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. What excellent new innovations you've highlighted for us. I'm sure there are many people in the audience that would be very interested, perhaps even to make contact with you, make inquiries about more information or where they can purchase or obtain these products. So Inigo, I wonder if you don't mind, maybe in the chat box, if you can put your email address or your website, because I'm pretty sure that there are going to be some people that are interested in following up on, first of all, you know, those new spray pumps, which are much lighter than the old Hudson pumps, inconvenient, although robust as they were very heavy and you know, very tiresome after several hours of carrying those Hudson pumps. And then the incredible device that you attach to the spray gun, the spray for measuring, for monitoring and evaluation of the spray quality, etc. So wonderful innovations. Thank you for sharing with us. I know the first thing that will probably come to mind in many people is what is the cost? How does it, you know, how do the new pumps compare with the old Hudson pump, and what is the cost of that device that you demonstrated? So sincere thanks to you, Inigo. I'm sure there are going to be questions coming up in Q&A, but we need to move on. So I'm going to move on to the role of IRS in Pakistan, and in particular during humanitarian crises. And it will be delivered by Dr. Mukhtar. Dr. Mohammed Mukhtar is the director in the Directorate of Malaria Control in Pakistan. He has worked in the field of medical entomology for the last 25 years, and he has vast experience, and I mean that, vast experience in the development of national strategy for the control of vectors of public health importance and the implementation of those national strategies. Dr. Mukhtar's core areas of expertise are the development of quality assurance guidelines and mechanisms for vector control interventions, including IRS, ITN, larval source management, etc. And impact assessment of these interventions is also his area of expertise. Very recently, Dr. Mukhtar developed the Pakistan National Plan of Action for sustainable management of VBDs, vector-borne diseases in Pakistan, and climate change has been included as a key factor in that strategic plan. He's author of the National Quality Assurance Protocol and Tools for IRS Operation in Pakistan, and his talk is going to focus mainly on these Q&A protocols and tools to make IRS efficient and cost-effective for sustainable management of malaria and other VBDs in the region. So, Dr. Mukhtar, it's a pleasure to have you as part of the panel for presenting, sharing all those insights and experience that you have. Over to you, Dr. Mukhtar.
Can you put on the full screen mode? Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Leo, for a nice introduction, and thank you very much for my participation in this very important webinar, the role of indoor residual spray for the control of malaria and other vector-borne disease. No doubt the role of indoor residual is very important in the control of malaria and other vector-borne disease. So my talk will be cover its very important role in malaria control of malaria vectors, and particularly in the scenario of humanitarian crisis. Next, please. Yeah, this is the sequence of my talk, and mean that this is the agenda for next 15 minutes. That I will explain the national strategy for vector control in Pakistan and national strategy for IRS and the quality assurance in IRS in Pakistan, and then humanitarian crisis in Pakistan, and what is the role of the IRS to control to mitigate the humanitarian crisis, and then finally summary. Please next. Yeah, here's the national strategy for vector control strategy. The national vector control strategy based on the use of the long-lasting insecticide-treated nets, ITN, and then indoor residual spray. Currently, we are using the indoor residual spray as mainly as an epidemic response. However, according to our national long-term strategic plan, which start from 2021 to 2035, IRS will be also will be as a campaign intervention onward from the 2024, which means that from this year we a national program will take up as IRS as a campaign intervention, not as an epidemic response, and more important that the IRS will be supported from the domestic resources according to our national strategy plan. The third pillar of the vector control strategy in the country is the larval source management, which mainly cover the larviciding, mainly based on the chemicals. Then also we are promoting the biocides, BTI, insect growth regulators, which are mainly being currently used for the dengue control in Pakistan. The environmental management, use of repellents, cloth treatments have also been included our new strategy of our vector control, a new strategic plan from 2024. Fogging, which is mainly used as an epidemic response, mainly for the dengue control. Fogging is not recommended in the country as a routine intervention. It is only recommended as a epidemic response, particularly for dengue control. Then on top of all this, the behavior change communication, which is actually the educating the community for the better acceptance of the intervention. You know that the intervention can play its important role when it will be accepted by the community. So these are the important strategic pillar of our national vector control strategy. Please next. Yeah, this is our malaria control strategy for IRS. Before 2000, we have a strategy for the IRS where we select the target area based on the number of the cases, that like the 5 falciparum vivax cases and or 2 falciparum cases. 5 vivax are 2 falciparum, and then 20 to 15 to 20 surrounding houses were separate. And though there are some countries which are still following this strategy, but after 2007, our strategy was revised for IRS, which was mainly focused on the system strength in capacity building through the best available practices for IRS. Time and target specific IRS, which means that we make a very crystal clear timelines and what would be the timing for the IRS to get its desired impact. Then monitoring evaluation, and on top of that, we introduced the policy of the only WHO pre-qualified insecticide use in the country. There was one limitation in 2005 national strategy, that there was no guidelines to deal the emergency situation in the country. If there is any emergency, just like last year, we have a huge flood, and even we have also flood in 2010. There was a huge flood in Pakistan, and then we revised our IRS strategy, which was also addressing the emergency response in the country. Next, please. Yeah, this is the schematic representation of a national strategy for IRS. If you look at it, as I mentioned previous slide, that the before peak transmission, 1 month before peak transmission, we have the strategy to introduce or to launch a IRS campaign in the country, which means if you have the peak start in July, in June, you have to complete your IRS. And before IRS, we are to complete the larval source management or larviciding, because as per international guidelines, the larviciding can be done during the dry months when there are limited number of the breeding sites which are easily manageable. Larviciding is not recommended during the rain season, because in the rainy months you can't estimate the breeding site and the huge use of insects. So as per national guideline as well as the international standard, larviciding will be completed during the dry months when there are limited number of the breeding sites which are easily manageable. And before the larviciding are in the non-transmission months, you are to complete the distribution of the bed nets. So these are the some schematic representation of the our national strategy for the vector control, which clearly indicate the timings for the implementation of the different intervention. Indoor residual spray at least 1 month before the peak transmission. At least 1 month before the IRS, you are to complete the larviciding. And then during the non-transmission period, these are your planning season as well as the bed net distribution, because the bed net currently, since 2018, we are following the campaign pattern of distribution of the bed net, which means the bed net should also be distributed during the non-transmission period in a shortest period of time, maybe within 1 month, 1 week. So these are our strategic pillar regarding the timing of the implementation of the different intervention in the country. Next, please. Yeah. No, quality assurance in indoor residual spray. Again, as Aningos gave a very important presentation, he has a wonderful equipment tools for the quality indoor residual spray. And here in Pakistan, we have some quality assurance mechanism for indoor residual spray, that how we can have a quality assured indoor residual spray to get its desired impact on the disease transmission. Please, next. Yeah. Globally, you know that the IRS is most widely used and favorite method for the control of vector of the public health importance. However, in Pakistan, it is not a very preferred intervention due to logistic and operational cost. However, IRS is one of the best intervention to bring the caseload immediately, particularly in the scenario of the emergency response or humanitarian crisis. In a definition, you look at the uniform application of insecticide having a long residual efficacy to all stable surfaces, serving as a potential resting places for the vector inside the human occupancy at the regular interval depending upon the length of the intervention. In the definition, I have 3 highlighted words: uniform application at stable surfaces and regular intervals, which mean that these are the 3 basic principles of the IRS to make it a best of the best IRS operation. In my experience, and I'm sure that the people who have a lot of experience with IRS will agree with me that IRS is not a simple intervention. It's an art, which you need a huge capacity building, large logistic resources, and on the top of that you must have a well-prepared monitoring evaluation plan. So that's why I call it's not a simple intervention, it's an art. Please, next. Yeah. As I mentioned in my previous slide, IRS operation will only be effective and sustainable when it will be performed with the certain criteria and certain principles or SOPs, like at the right time-specific intervention, that, as I mentioned, that 1 month before the transmission. If you apply the IRS when the transmission is going on, when the peak transmission is going on, you can't get the impact of the IRS as it is there. And at the right place, you must apply the IRS at the target site, which means that if you have the area which is qualified IRS and you have not IRS, then there are some issues with the quality of the IRS. Then full coverage, yes, it's either is IRS or the bed net distribution. Until unless you will not give the 100% coverage of your target area, you will not get the desired impact of the intervention. Right insecticide, this is very important. That is mean that the WHO pre-qualified, because WHO pre-qualified product are the quality qualified product, which are certified from some organization which can give you the guarantee that these are the best of the best product. So as per national strategy, since 2008-9, we are only using the WHO pre-qualified insecticide in the country, and appropriate application technique. This is also very important. Note all these pillars and all these points are equally important. We can't say this is more important point than if you don't put the iris at the right time, you will not get impact. If you don't put the iris on the right place, you will not get the impact. Appropriate implication technique is very important. And you know that as a vector control expert, you know that more than 90% inefficiency of iris is due to wrong method of application, which Inigo has solved a lot of problem. We are extremely thankful after having his presentation, and he solved a lot of operational problems which we are facing during the field operation. And I'm sure that the new tools which developed by the Gospierre can serve a huge service to the national program to solve these issues of the operational inefficiencies of IRIS. Then full preparation. If you have no preparation with IRIS time and sufficiently apply all the logistic requirements, you will not get the impact of the IRIS. And then BCC. Again, the BCC is very important because until and unless your community will not accept your intervention, you will not get the desired impact of intervention. And BCC is more important in the scenario of the IRIS because you will have to convince the community they should prepare their household for IRIS because you know that the most of the resting places of the mosquito, resting places of the local vector species are behind the almari furniture. And if the community is not cooperating with you for the proper application of the IRIS, you will not get the impact of the IRIS. So BCC is a very important for a quality assured IRIS in the country. And on top of that, APMEN plan. Definitely, until unless you will not supervise, you will not evaluate your intervention, you can't make the planning for next year. So these are the strategic pillars, are the operational guidelines which the IRIS which make the IRIS more effective and sustainable in your country. Next, please. Yes, here the equality IRIS operation has 4 basic principles, equally important in the routine operation as well as in the emergency response, that the total. Total means all the structure in the selected area, all the household in the selected area must be treated thoroughly. Within the household structure, all the sleeping room, store, animal sheds, bathroom, verandas, and porches must be treated with the treated. And if you left any place, you are providing the resting place for the mosquito, and so which means that they will not IRIS will not give you the desired impact on the disease transmission. And second pillar is the complete. All the potential resting places, including difficult to reach surfaces. This is very important. Difficult to reach surfaces mean underside of the furniture. You can see in a picture that underside of the furniture or back side of the furniture, until unless you will not do your IRIS to these difficult to reach areas, you will not get the impact of the IRIS. Next, please. Third important pillar is please next. Yeah, uniformity. This is very important. All the treated surfaces must have the uniform application of the required dose of insecticide. Again, I would like to say thanks to my first colleagues who made a wonderful presentation, how they can maintain the uniformity in the insecticide application. If you have the overdose, you will not get you will develop the resistance. If you have underdose, resistance will be there and there will be no proper control. So third pillar is the treatment, the uniform application of the required dose of insecticide on on the target surfaces and regular. Now, this pillar need to be revised because after the regular mean treated at the regular intervals depending upon the transmission period. I just give you the example of Pakistan. We have the 2 or 3 different scenarios of the transmission. In some areas, we have a short transmission period where the one cycle of the insecticide application is enough. In areas where we have long transmission period or the over the year transmission, then we have to repeat the IRIS at a certain period of the interval, depending upon the length of the efficacy of the insecticide. However, recent development in IRIS on which we are talking today that recently, after the introduction of the second generation or third generation insecticide, which have the efficacy up to 1 year, even more than 1 year, there is no need to repeat it, which means that the new generation insecticide can reduce your operational cost by reducing the number of cycles, which previously we will do 2 or 3 cycles. But now, after the intro of these new generation insecticide, there is no need of repetition of the IRS operation, which means that new insecticide has reduced your operational cost significantly. Next, please. So these are the 4 pillars, basic principles, strategic pillar, which make the IRS more sustainable and effective. Now, what is humanitarian crisis? Because I'm not going to share one of the best example from Pakistan, how we use the IRS in the humanitarian crisis. During the last few decades, Pakistan has faced few massive natural disasters which lead to humanitarian crisis, particularly floods, even in some military operation in our bordering areas, particularly during 2016 and 18, and particularly in 2022, when the country received 90% increase in rainfall, which led to a devastating flood, particularly in the Sindh and Balochistan province, which are already malaria endemic. Almost 65% of the country was affected by this flood, which means that almost 30 million people had to live in the temporary shelters like tents and some other places. During this emergency crisis in the country, almost 1,800 people died, including 650 children. Due to this flood, there was a marked rise of the malaria cases in Sindh and Balochistan province in July 2022, and country reached to the state of emergency of the malaria in the month of August. National and international experts expected the extension intense transmission beyond December 2022 after when the water was finished in the recession of the flood water. In 2021, we have 375,000 cases in the country, but after the flood, this number dramatically increased to 3.1 million. And even in 2023, as a consequences of this natural humanitarian crisis, still we have the more than 2 million or 2.5 million malaria cases in the country. This outbreak was recognized heaviest resurgence in the history of the last 50-year history of the country. Please next. Now, vector control humanitarian crisis. I very well know that the traditional vector control methods under humanitarian emergencies make a very big challenge for the program, which has the routine approach, which have the approach with the routine vector control. Therefore, it is extremely important that the program must have develop a specialized vector control program under the context of humanitarian crisis. A well-coordinated emergency prepared and response plan not only save the life and property, but also significantly reduce the destructive impacts of the disaster. You know that there are several interventions for the control of vector control, which include the IRS and larval source management by ITNs, and out of these, both IRS and ITNs have been recognized as a core intervention, but these interventions have some limitations under the humanitarian crisis. But still, out of these 2 core interventions, IRS is considered the best option under the humanitarian crisis. And here is an example from Pakistan. Please next. Yes. During 2022, 80% internal displaced population were living in the tent or temporary shelters such as schools, hospitals, and government buildings. We are accommodating the 50 to 20 families or 90 to 100 individuals in one big hall. You can see the upper right picture, where more than 100 people were living in one big hall. These families were also provided free of cost ITN by the program through our donors, but we are extremely thankful to our donor Global Fund who provide us a huge number of the mosquito net during this emergency. Not only the Global Fund, but also other partners like UNICEF, WHO. They were playing a wonderful role to deal this situation. But After the provision of these bed net, the people can't use these bed net because of the shock constraint of the space constraint as a non-availability sticks. You know that in the big hall, when the 100 people were living in a big hall, they can't install the bed net for the individual family, provided they have the bed net. So due to this constraint, the people were not using the bed net despite the fact they were provided the free of cost bed net. And the people who were living in the tents, they cannot also install the bed net, or rather they just hang the bed net in the entrance of the tent in the open sunlight. And there were some also misuses of the bed net. So these were some challenges for the use of the mosquito nets during this humanitarian crisis in Pakistan. Next. Now the IRS. During this humanitarian crisis of 2020, and as I already mentioned that IRS is extremely preferred intervention in humanitarian crisis in the emergency context. And also, IRS is considered most effective intervention to bring down the caseload very quickly, particularly under humanitarian situation. Due to highlighted issues on my previous slide, that we promoted the IRS in the big halls where the people were living, and thanks to WHO and other partners, with the help of WHO, we developed a very systematic IRS campaign, particularly in those areas where the test positive rate was more than 50%, which means that more than 50% population was malaria affected. And with the help of WHO and other partner, MSF, UNICEF, we designed a very systematic example of the use of the IRS in a country. Next, please. And this is the classic example of the use of IRS in the country to bring down the caseload very quickly. Here is slide positive in some areas where the slide positivity rate was more than 50%. Very systematic IRS campaign with the support of WHO and other partners, MSF. 100% population was 100% target area was given protected through IRS. Significant decline in the density as well as the vector density as well as the caseload. You can see there are the certain selected areas where the 100% coverage was given, and if you the last column where the mosquito density per positive was shown, that before the IRS 5.6, 9.9, 7.8, but after the IRS, this systematic IRS, having the IRS, there was a significant decline in the population of the vector densities. And after the further analysis of the data, there was a sharp decline of the cases. Next, please. Next, please. Yes, there is an example of a IRS in a country, is one district of the Ratodero, Larkana district, with the test positive more than 50%, and you can see the coverage of the 100% coverage of the target areas with full preparation. Next, please. And here you can see in my previous slide that the number of houses, 10,000, 600, 700 houses were covered, and there was a sharp decline of the densities. So this shows that if you have IRS with full preparation using the WHO pre-qualified insecticide with trained human resource, you can bring down the caseload very quickly. And in the same areas, there are some areas where the bed net were also provided, but due to certain reason, community was not using those bed net, due to which that there was no decline in the densities as well as the caseload. This shows the classic example, and we are very thankful to WHO and other partners for this very systematic IRS operation in that with the collaboration of the national program. Next, please. Here is, I think there's the summary. Pakistan has one of the best IRS operation till 1990s through the domestic resources. But after some donor support, after 2000, the IRS, the coverage of IRS is going to be declined. And currently, Pakistan is using IRS as an epidemic response only in global fund supported district. But no, there is a paradigm shift in our national strategy from 2024, according to our national strategy plan. IRS will be adopted as a campaign intervention from domestic resources. No, from the global fund resources, we can use the bed net. And from domestic resources, IRIS will be used as a, so this is a wonderful model from the country that both intervention will be used as a core and as a campaign intervention in the country, keeping in view our malaria elimination goal till 2035. I already explained that the traditional vector control methods under humanitarian crisis has a big challenge because the program routine has a routine approach. So programs should develop a specialized vector control plan in the context of the humanitarian emergencies based on the identified changes for the user in the context of the IRIS is the best option during humanitarian emergencies. Now, IRIS is not only preferred by the donor due to logistic operational cost, but still we believe that the IRIS is the best intervention particularly for those countries which have the target of malaria elimination. So we can use in a balanced way the both intervention, ILN and the IRIS, keeping in view the scenario. If there is you have the target of elimination, you have to focus more on IRIS, and if there are certain scenarios where the IRIS can't work, you can use the ITN. So these are the both core intervention which are now being used in the country after 2024 in a balanced way. Next, please. So I think, thank you very much. I did this all about my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dr. Mukhtar, a master presentation there, and it reflects I mean, you were the person at the head of the Department of Malaria Control. You were the person held responsible and accountable for responding to the crisis situation that arose as a consequence of the floods. Clearly, you responded effectively, professionally. You deserve a medal for the practical way you went about dealing with confronting that emergency. And, you know, you've shared with us many of the lessons and practical insights that were gleaned, distilled as a consequence of that experience. Things that don't come with book learning, but you learned it the hard way by going through that emergency and seeing the consequences and what works, what doesn't work, what works best. So you deserve a medal. Please, you know, accept our congratulations for the way Pakistan and yourself dealt with that emergency. And I also have deep respect for the way Pakistan has agreed to use domestic funding to supplement Global Fund, ITNs, and so on to implement IRS from domestic funding as well. It reflects a great deal of your persuasive powers and the impact that crisis had on government thinking and willingness to open its coffers for IRS as well. So a great presentation, Dr. Mukhtar. Thank you for that. I have no doubt there will be many questions from our audience to get greater detail from you. But first, let's move over to Dr. Manuel Luberas, who's going to inform us about the business architecture of indoor residual spraying, sorting out the operational details. Manuel is a distinguished public health entomologist with extensive experience covering integrated vector control, capacity building, community engagement, disaster preparedness and response, and emergency vector control in 4 continents. Very experienced man. Manuel played a pivotal role in designing the malaria vector control framework through indoor residual spraying of the President's Malaria Initiative, the United States PMI. He demonstrated exceptional leadership in directing mosquito control operations in the aftermath of the Indonesian tsunami, huge catastrophe as well, and the earthquake in Haiti, contributing significantly to post-disaster public health efforts. Manuel developed the World Health Organization's operational manual for indoor residual spraying, a cornerstone resource in vector control strategies worldwide. Manuel has received accolades such as the American Mosquito Control Association's Meritorious Service Award and the Global Trade Award from the Global Trade Chamber. His dedication and expertise were further acknowledged during his tenure as entomologist and medical mobilization planner for the United States Navy, where he was a finalist for the Rear Admiral Charles S. Stevenson Award for excellence in the United States Navy preventive medicine. So clearly a man with great talent, experience over decades of exposure across 4 continents. We listen eagerly to some of the insights and lessons that you are able to share with us. Over to you, and thank you for staying up until way past a reasonable bedtime. Thank you, Manuel. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I don't know if you can see my screen.
It looks good. Yeah, it
okay.
Looks good. Thanks, Manuel.
In case you hear a slight odd noise, it is just about 2 in the morning my time, and I have a very loud tree frog in my balcony that is making itself being known. So before we get started, my sincere thanks to Dr. Mukhtar and Dr. Bhatt, the Asia Pacific Elimination Network, and its board of directors for the opportunity to share with you some of my knowledge on and experiences on IRS. I have been chasing mosquitoes around and biting insects around the world for the last 30 plus years, including some IRS campaigns targeting Chagas disease in South America. I've also been engaged in several large disasters, and it has been quite a ride. In 2022, as you all know, the World Health Organization placed indoor residual spraying as one of the recommended most reactive strategies to prevent the spread of malaria. In the interest of time, we're going to step away from the mechanics of IRS and concentrate on the business architecture of a campaign. And this is because we all know that a properly structured and managed campaign operates smoothly and efficiently, minimizes downtime, accidents, and incidents, and keeps equipment in good operational order. The thing that we're trying to do is to prevent these images on the right, which is unfortunately way too frequent in many IRS campaigns. So a solid business architecture for IRS will improve political will for the campaign. It will improve stakeholder engagement. And what I mean by stakeholder is department besides the ministries of health, the ministries of water, public works, communications, transportation, education, finance, tourism. Anybody who is a minister in a government should be engaged. It expands and advances community engagement and participation, making them essentially force multipliers, as is often used. And last but not least, it demonstrates and reveals good leadership and planning. So before sorting out the details, there are many, many, many parts to an IRS campaign. And this is perhaps the reason why an IRS campaign is often described as days of frustration and seemingly endless meetings with interminable calculations. But it is part of sorting out the details of the business architecture of a campaign. all of these can be placed together in essentially 7 basic pieces that you should be able to fit them all together neatly. And bear in mind that mosquito control is a full-time effort and is organized in essentially a cycle. IRS campaigns are no exception. Note that I have not linked this to a calendar because the campaign is based on local parameters, not a specific calendar. We don't have time to get into the details, but please keep this in mind. Putting it all together requires a special tool. And this is why I created the IRS Business Architecture Calculator. It is the result of spending way too many nights alone in a hotel room with only a laptop computer for company. The idea is that it generates accurate area-specific estimates in less time by using IRS and site-specific input provided by the user through a brief questionnaire that includes the name of the country, its population, names of selected areas in their populations, the average size of families, the number of weeks of the campaign, expected completion dates, and many, many, many other things. It asks the user to define the number of rural and urban homes, the average number of partitions in these homes, the number of internal divisions in this home, the selected insecticide for the homes, its cost, other project information like size of sprayer, mode of transportation for the teams and its cost, wages, training dates, geographical reconnaissance, laundry facilities, if you're going to have them, yes or no, and information, education, and communication materials and its costs. And I'm going really fast because this is a lot of information, but we can discuss this later on. We're running out of time too. It asks for area-specific information, and as you put all the information in these columns, it generates data specific to that area. All the entries include options and suggestions from pull-down menus in every cell, or what I call the electronic assistant, recommendations. If you don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into, we provide recommendations from the electronic assistants to say, for instance, if you don't know how many houses, count on being able to treat 10 or 15 houses in a day, and things like that. Because the idea is to generate the most accurate business architecture. And remember, this is all business. This is boiled down to a lot of money. And this is generated by just pressing a button. The information you get is the information you put in, arranged neatly in a 3 or 4 page document that includes cost estimates, that includes wages and equipment. It will generate cost estimates for everything you put in there. It will generate a multi-year budget. It will have an activity calendar based on the end date of the campaign. And because you put these parameters in the first few pages, it calculates the date of all of these events that need to happen before you actually pull the trigger and deploy the teams to pull the trigger on the IRS campaign. You need to have partner consultation meetings, district micro planning, et cetera, entomological surveys, IEC, need to conduct an IEC campaign, actually conduct the operation, and afterwards, you need to evaluate what happened. What was the outcome? It provides a breakdown of the resource allocation. Where did the money go? Okay, and you see in this one is very heavy on educational material This has geocoding, and disregard the numbers. I mean, I put this in there for illustration purposes, so disregard the numbers. It will provide a team rotation schedule, and this is key for an IRS campaign because some members of your teams will not work on Fridays, others do not work on Sundays, and others do not work on Saturdays, but they all need to be included in this equation. So in order to have everybody with sufficient downtime, remember, these are human beings, not machines, with sufficient downtime so they can go home and relax. But the activities and the operation does not suffer. You have to have some sort of an activity, a rotation schedule. So the IRS business architecture is designed to help program managers turn hours of days or days of work into project-specific customized estimates. You don't like anything, go back to the initial few pages, change what you have, hit a button, and you get a new result that will fit into the parameters you want. It will improve funding allocation. That will tell your funders where the money's going, how is it being used, where the resources went, and will help you reach the objectives of the campaign, and give your campaign a professional, neat, organized look. You maximize your resources and you minimize your downtime. With these, I will leave you. Thanks for the opportunity. My apologies for being so quick, but we're running out of time and we'd like to be able to answer some questions. It has been a pleasure and a privilege. I trust my comments and contributions are useful. Feel free to contact me using the information on the screen or scanning the QR code. I can help you design or evaluate the program, or just chat about mosquito control in general, or, which is something dear and close to my professional work, emergency vector control and IRS. And especially give me a call or send me an email if you're starting this IRS journey. I've been doing this for 30-some years, and I know what you're going through. Thank you very much.
Manuel, masterful presentation. All too quick, though. My goodness, such a wealth of information available, and unfortunately, too little time. So thank you for your consideration. And thank you for your offer to allow audience members to contact you. So it's up on the screen there, but in a moment or so, I'm going to ask if you can stop share screen. So because not everyone has a pencil and piece of paper readily at hand, it may be useful, at least your email address, if you can pop that into the chat box, please, Manuel. Then people have more time to find a pencil and piece of paper and go to the chat box and write down your email address. That would be great.
I'll take it off the screen now.
Okay. Then the other thing is it's just popped up on the screen there. Several people have been asking for copies of the presentations. Just to reassure everyone, this entire webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared on 2 different websites. It's the Aureen website, and then there's another website of APMEN, and the information should be shown up on the screen at some point again, so that you can download the full webinar and have access to all this wonderful information that has been made available. Okay, so to all our speakers, Inigo, Dr. Mukhtar, Manuel, what a wonderful, gee whiz, compact mass of information, highly valuable, deeply appreciated. We now move to our Q&A session. And I'm going to try and spread them across our speakers in the order. It doesn't always work that way because many people home in on one particular speaker, but I'll do my best. So let's first go to, I'm just scrolling through the different questions here. So there's a question here posed by David Stewart, and it's for Inigo. Do you think that community-based IRS will have a significant impact on malaria burden and transmission? I don't know what you mean, David, by community-based IRS. You know, IRS campaigns are not implemented by communities. It's a very complicated, complex intervention done usually by government departments and sometimes by NGOs such as Goodbye Malaria and so on. So this is not something where you go and hand out spray pumps to community members and teach them how to do it. But communities are, of course, absolutely critically important by being involved and making their dwellings open and available to the spray teams, etc., collaborating with the spray teams. So it's a joint effort to make this possible. David, then you go on to talk about perlite active ingredient. And it's not really in the nature of a question. It's more a comment, I think. Inigo, I don't know if you want to respond to any of the, not sure if you've seen the question because I'm scrolling on my screen. You want to comment on any of that, Inigo?
Yes, maybe I can do a comment. I don't have a large experience in community-based IRS. I know that there are some interesting initiatives in Africa, as David was saying. I think that that approach is quite interesting, as you were saying. Community acceptance is very critical for the success of IRS campaigns. So if IRS is being done at community base, probably that acceptance is going to be higher. Probably the challenges there would be that you need to have very well-trained people to do it right. And it's not easy to spread the IRS methodology to such a small community basis easily. So maybe the IKSMALA can help in that direction, can make things easier so community-based approaches can be done wider. So the question, I think, is very interesting. And let's see if IKSMALA can help in those countries where these kind of approaches are being taken seriously.
Inigo, I'm going to come back to you in a little while once we've cycled through the other two speakers. There's a question from Jeffrey Heather. Maybe you can just scroll down and read what Jeffrey asks. But before then, I'm going to ask Dr. Mukhtar to respond to there are a few of them that relate to use of IRS for dengue. So dengue vector control. Dr. Mukhtar, do you just want to talk about, give a few quick responses to the relevance and use of indoor residual spraying as an intervention for dengue vector control? Any comments from you on that, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very interesting question, and people normally ask this question in the country because the dengue is irregular. There are outbreaks in the country in some part and some next at other parts. So this is very interesting questions about the use of the IRS. Yes, IRS is also in our national strategy for dengue control, but is not as a campaign intervention. It is as an epidemic response or the case response. Case response means that if there is a dengue positive case, confirmed houses, we spread the 12 houses in the surrounding of that confirmed houses, keeping in view the resting and flight range of the dengue mosquito. So the IRS is recommended as a case response. I'm again saying the case response means that the confirmed malaria, a dengue case household the surrounding 12 to 15 houses, but though there are some provinces are using the up to 30, 40 houses in the surrounding of the dengue confirmed cases, but 12 to 14K household are sufficient to be treated for the dengue control through IRS, but not as a campaign intervention like with a blanket spray in a full area for the dengue control. So this is the response for the dengue control and is well built in our national guidelines for dengue control. So the IRS is recommended, but as a case response, not as a campaign intervention. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. I'm trying to find a question here for Manuel, and I'm scrolling down. Manuel, I'm not sure if you've come across any questions that you'd like to respond to. Otherwise, I'm just going to throw a general question at you. And that is, they touch on aspects of the classes or the specific brands, the compounds typically used for IRS currently, and specifically also to what are the newer compounds available for IRS that move beyond maybe the pyrethroid-based products historically used, or DDT, as in South Africa and so on. And there are also some questions that relate to if a country doesn't do resistance monitoring, how often should they switch? Now, I mean, you know, you shouldn't switch. You should be monitoring insecticide resistance. So any comments from you about products being used, what's becoming available, insecticide resistance monitoring, anything along those lines, Manuel?
Yeah, there was a comment about the options for insecticide on the example I provided. And the quick answer is disregard. The example I provided is only an example. Each one of those cells has pull-down menus with a number of available materials for IRS, which brings me to the number of available materials. The traditional ones is pyrethroids and organophosphates and organochlorines are still there for the most part. And there are combinations of new things that are coming out. There are new materials that are currently under field tests and field evaluations that I'm not at liberty to say because there's still not field evaluations. But there is a number of things that can be used. And remember, no one method will provide the results you want. And this is basic integrated vector management. If you do larviciding and source reduction, it'll reduce malaria, but it's not going to eliminate it. If you do IRS, we'll do the same thing. It will reduce vector-borne diseases, but it will not eliminate it. We all need to start thinking and press the issue. And I see a note from Dr. Shiva. Hi, Shiva. We all need to start thinking that integrated vector management is a series of tools that we deploy in conjunction with each other. And there is a special time and place for each of the tools, not just the use of mosquito nets, not just the use of IRS, and not just the use of source reduction and larviciding. It is the word integrated, by definition, means pulling everything together and throwing what we can throw at the mosquito based on time and resistance and a few other things. But all these tools should be available in the tool bag, ready to be used by every vector control program.
Thank you, Manuel. So before I go back, we start the cycle afresh then, starting with Inigo. Let me just test something here. It's been a frustration with me that people raise their hand and they want to ask a question, but I've consistently been told by our technical team that because of the particular Zoom platform we use, we are not able to enable audience members to ask a question live. But I'm going to ask once more I'd like to, Pradeep, I saw you raise your hand, and I'd very much like to give you the opportunity to ask a question live. So let me just ask Dr. Porn and Wulan, are we able to take live questions, activate an audience member so they can pose a question? Is that possible?
Dr. Leo, yes, it is possible. We can allow to talk.
Wonderful, wonderful news. Dr. Pradeep Srivastava, all the way from Delhi. Do you want to activate your, unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you, Leo. Am I audible?
Yes, you are very welcome. Thank you, Pradeep.
So very nice. First, let me congratulate all the three speakers. Excellent presentation. And because I am an insecticide man, so these are all very close to my heart. But I would like to raise one, just flag an issue if anybody can give a comment, because there is a kind of tug of war between the procurement policies of different countries and the recommendation of one particular class of insecticide or group of insecticide. So take, for example, synthetic pyrethroid, because DDT we will not talk. Now it has been phased out almost from most of the countries. And then one second. And then when you come to say synthetic pyrethroid in a group, because they are all in equivalent, you cannot select that you want only this particular insecticide, whether it is a deltamethrin or lambda-cyhalothrin or cyphalothrin. So how to go about selecting one insecticide of IRS, and how to win the procurement process, that you cannot recommend one, and by tender processing, if one comes every time lowest, then there is another challenge for all of us, that technical resistance monitoring by WHO methods. So this is a great challenge we are facing this, that every time suppose deltamethrin comes or alpha cypermethrin comes, so you can't have a choice for changing or rotation of the insecticide, because ultimately you have to plan a procurement. Thank you.
Yeah. So Pradeep, who would you like to respond to your question?
Maybe Manuel is, I feel that he is the best person for technical guidance.
You want
Otherwise,
to have a go, Manuel?
procurement cycle, Dr. Mukhtar has been doing, because as a director, he has been doing and managing the whole show.
Yeah.
On the spot. So my experience has been that many of the people who sign the procurement documents don't necessarily understand why you make the decision to choose the insecticide you chose. Okay. And we can get into the science of resistance and the science of behavior and the science of everything. But we need to convince the people who write the checks to pay for these things that we are taking the right and making the right decisions. Okay. You never, and forgive me for going deep into this, but very few people actually question a physician when they say to you, take 4 or 5 of these pills every 2 or 3 days, every 2 or 3 hours. Nobody questions that. But why is it that they question the choice of materials to be used to control something that is killing 600,000 people a year? Okay. We need to get the stakeholders engaged, which is one of the reasons why I put this thing together. We need to get all the stakeholders engaged so they understand the reasoning why we put these things together and how to operate these campaigns. Otherwise, we are going to be fighting these procurement fights for the rest of our lives.
Thank you, Manuel. Okay, so I'm going to cycle back to Inigo. This is the question by Jeffrey. Hopefully you've read the question, Inigo, but let me just try briefly summarize it. So Jeffrey's asking, programs that use your new equipment, especially the smart light technology, how does the efficiency of those programs in terms of vector reduction, in terms of case reduction, in terms of cost savings, time savings, and so on, do you have any idea of, have any studies been done to show the difference, the savings or efficiencies incurred as a consequence of using that IK Smart Light technology, Inigo?
Okay, thank you for that. Very good question. The thing is that to do such an important study, you need to make a real big study using many prototypes. As I told you, we are in the final stages of the validation of the tool, and we have been doing some field trials, but these field trials have not been in a great scale, have been to test that the technology works, that everything works correctly in the field. But our next step will be to do an important field study so we can really answer these kind of questions. At this moment, we can say that thanks to this tool, trainings can be done much quicker. We have seen that because we can really measure the spraying technique of spray operators using and not using the device. We can measure both of them. We can measure how they do their job in the field. We can see that supervision. We can measure many operational things, but we need to go further to answer those questions about vector reductions, case reductions, and we hope that next year, if we are able to go to a country in a larger scale, we can do this kind of studies and analysis and come back here, hopefully next year, with all this kind of information with more detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Inigo, before you go, Jeffrey has another question embedded within the overall question, and that is, most programs still use the metal Hudson pump, very durable, very reliable. But so can you just tell us your new IK sprayer pump? How long? What is the average lifespan? How long? How does it compare with a Hudson pump? Maybe an unfair comparison, and the real thing would come with a cost factor. But okay.
No, I would say that this is a very common question. We come up with this new sprayer specifically designed for IRS in 2016. We started in Africa in many IRS programs, and they are still using it. So we know that at least it withstands 8 years, but the design is very robust. It shouldn't have any issues to stay longer. But the key thing here is not always the big parts. It are the small parts. With good maintenance and some routine spare parts usage, you shouldn't have any issue to have for this pump for a long time.
All right, that's very encouraging. That's very reassuring. So I'm going to ask you this question: that little device with the laser light and measuring distance and so on, what is the cost per unit of that, please, Inigo? Ballpark, just roughly.
Okay, this is a quite hard question to answer until we have the whole picture finished. Why? Because when you are designing a sprayer, it's something physical. You can have a quite good idea about the cost. Here we have 3 tools. We have the electronic device, that is something physical. We can roughly know the cost and of that device. Here the key thing is that we are offering digital services. We have a smartphone app, we have a digital platform, and we are still analyzing how it should be the best strategy to offer digital services. This is a quite new thing for Whisper. We want to do it right, and we need to analyze it properly, and probably by June, July, once the validation of all these tools have been finished, we will have a better approach for that. Sorry, I cannot give you a figure now, but I can tell you one thing. It's not going to be probably at the beginning as something like cheap, the first impression, but we are seeing that you can, using this kind of tools, you can have a guarantee that IRS is being done at a high level, is very well supervised, qualified, and then we want in a nice study to see which are the cost savings thanks to the usage of these tools. So sorry, I cannot give you a figure, but by June, July, I will be in a position to answer that in a better way.
Thank you, Inigo. So I'm going to repeat again, but perhaps you've done it. I just haven't checked the chat box. If you can put your email address or website or something so that people can contact you. There's a lot of interest. So it would be good if people are able to connect with you. So there's a question here. I'm going to direct it to Dr. Mukhtar. One of two questions I'm going to quickly pose to you. First one is a quick one. What is the active ingredient of the new, you mentioned an insecticide that remains effective for a year or more. The question is, what is the active ingredient for that long-lasting indoor residual spray compound, please, Dr. Mukhtar?
Yeah, very recently, during our meeting in APMEN Vector Control Working Group, there was a presentation from the Mitsui in Japan, which introduced their product, the Vectron 5000, which is they shows that effective up to 12 to 18 months. So that Vectron that they mentioned that and similarly there are some other active ingredients which are being used for which have a longer residual efficacy, but I forget the active ingredient for Vectron T500. I'm sorry, I can check and we can post this question for that one.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mukhtar. Quite right.
Yeah,
it's Mitsui Chemicals, Japan. MITSUI. Yeah. So just Google Mitsui Chemicals, and the product is Vectron T500.
Vectron.
Brofenolide or something like that. I can't. I also need to look at it. It's something brofenolide or something like that. Yeah. That's right. Dr. Mukhtar, there was another question. You can keep it very short because I think most people will know the answer. That we all know that IRS is an extremely effective intervention for vector control, and you don't have to rely on community members to use, for example, a bed net or something. You can give a community member a bed net, but you know, a significant percentage of them will still not use it. IRS, once the place is sprayed, it works. You don't have to rely on a community compliance or anything. So the reasons why Global Fund will actively support purchasing and distribution of ITNs, but not really support IRS. Can you just summarize that for us? So the consequence of that is that overwhelmingly, global first-line vector control depends on ITNs, LLINs, and not IRS. Why is that? Cost factor. Can you summarize that for us, Dr. Mukhtar?
Yeah, but there are different reasons at the national program manager. We are multiple time with negotiation with the global fund for the use of the IDS fund through global fund support because of the easiness in the logistic and operational cost. But because in 2019, when we were developing our national strategy plan between the global fund and program, that IRS will be used through the domestic resource, will be promoted to domestic resource from the global fund support. They are mainly supporting for 2022 when there was a humanitarian crisis in the country. The global fund also supported the 90,000 sachet for the IRS as the support for the procurement of the bed net, not for the IRS and IRIS is mainly will be from 2024 onward. Are you hearing me, Manuel? Are you hearing me?
Yes, yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Dr. Mukhtar. I can hear you.
Yeah, so this is my very brief justification that that the Global Fund is only supporting the ITN, maybe because of its operational as well as the logistic cost. But for the IRS, it is mainly the responsibility from the respective government 2021 to 2035.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. I see Manuel had his hand up. Do you want to say a few words, Manuel?
With regards to mosquito nets, especially in Africa, the appearance of Anopheles stephensi, a day-biting mosquito, an effective day-biting mosquito in Africa, will have to, the use of mosquito nets will have to be reconsidered or modified in some way, because stephensi is mostly, and mosquitoes do not read the same books we read, but is preferentially a day biter. And mosquito nets will probably not have the same impact as a nighttime biter indoors.
Thank you, Manuel. So this ties in. I realize that we've now overrun our designated allocated time, but I think there's 185 audience members still actively listening in, which is great. It shows strong interest. So, but I'm also aware, Manuel, that you need some sleep. So I'm going to ask you one more question. And, of course, Inigo, Dr. Mukhtar, please feel free to respond as well. There's a question here from Jeffrey. He, again, recently WHO urged countries to explore integration, for example, IRS for control of malaria vectors and Aedes-borne diseases. And he goes on, he makes a significant statement here. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but do you have any thoughts on WHO recommending integrating control efforts that target both malaria vectors and also Aedes-borne disease vectors, dengue, Zika, chikungunya, etc. Dr. Mukhtar, over to you.
Yes, I already explained that the use of IRS is already in our national guidelines for the Aedes or dengue control, but as a case response, not as a campaign intervention. But in Pakistan, we have clear demarcation between the distribution of vectors for the malaria and then national, you can say, strategy or policy. The malaria intervention can't be implemented in the urban areas because the malaria in Pakistan is mainly rural problem. So that's why all our interventions are in a rural area for malaria. For Aedes problems like dengue and chikungunya, we are also focusing in the urban areas through IRF, but only as a case response. Again, I'm using the term case response. In any household, that there are surrounding 12 to 14 houses will be spread as a case response, not as a campaign intervention. So the Aedes control program through IRS is already inbuilt our national guideline and strategy. And so integration is also very important. That should be the integration between but because of clear demarcation between the urban and the disease, both disease, we have the separate program for IRS program for the dengue as well as for the malaria, yes, for the implementation of IRS.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. So I suppose, there's no single magic bullet, as much as we wish there was, and that at the end of the day, we have to use a package of interventions, especially if you start thinking of control of both AEDs and anopheles, day biting, night biting, indoor, outdoor, zoophilic, anthropophilic, all those factors, very difficult to identify one single tool. Manuel, I'm going to ask if you have one final word to share with everyone other than good night before we let you go.
No, it's the thing, first is there'll be time to sleep on the eternal sleep. So don't worry about that. I'm good. The thing with mosquitoes is, and I have a very simple way of thinking. Okay, we do IRS. Let me start again. Mosquitoes cannot be on the wing all their lives. They have to come to rest somewhere. Okay, and those who say that day biting mosquitoes or that IRS doesn't work with day biting mosquitoes need to sit in a desk somewhere and see how these Aedes aegypti and all these day-biting mosquitoes are biting you at your ankles, because you're now introduce your legs into the mosquito territory. So again, someone is going to say, I'm full of it. But I believe that if we do integrated vector management, we can address pretty much any mosquito, day biting, indoors, outdoors, pretty much any mosquito. Some interventions are not going to work for a particular mosquito, but they will work as a group. Okay, and all we have to do is give it a try. And I'm really troubled after 30 some years of doing this. I'm really troubled to hear that. I'm sorry to hear people say, "Oh, this is not going to work against Aedes," or "Why are you targeting 80 mosquitoes?" And here's a thought in my bias with Africa. Zika was identified in Africa, and so was chikungunya, and so is West Nile, and so, Rift Valley. And these are not necessarily malaria mosquitoes. Why are we not targeting these mosquitoes as part of a vector control program? I don't get it.
Sure. I mean, that's a whole webinar in itself, Manuel, as you know. I mean, WHO did that survey 2 years ago in Africa that showed in all 47 African countries surveyed that there's a huge shortfall. It's the WHO words, huge gap in preparedness in African ministries of health to confront arbovirus threats. So, I mean, your question is relevant, but there's a lot of work to be done to raise the consciousness in Africa of the real risk and threat and growing risk of arboviruses, Aedes-borne viruses in particular. So very relevant question.
If you put it in perspective, 800,000 deaths to mosquito-borne diseases a year is essentially the equivalent of 5 or 6 747s crashing every day. And nobody seems to care.
I know. Everybody's priorities are elsewhere. Everybody has different priorities. Fully agree with you. So I'd like to ask this question. Inigo, please, do you have anything to say about the topics we've just discussed now? Can I move on to something else?
Okay, it has been a great pleasure to listen to these exceptional speakers, to have such a wide view of IRS, not only from the equipment perspective. And I wanted to add that we are here to answer all the questions. I have already shared my email. We are a very collaborative company. We are open to visit, to do trials. So please, I encourage people to contact us, and
Thank you.
we will share our knowledge with them.
We're very grateful for that offer. Thank you so much, Inigo. Dr. Mukhtar, you had your hand up. Is that a legacy hand, or do you have something to say?
Yeah. Yeah, but there was, I see that there is a question about the use of the WHO pre-qualified insecticide. Is there a mandatory, and what are the steps taken by? Because it's a direct question to the government, so that's why I want to respond that question.
Please,
Somebody
please.
asked the question: the use of WHO should be meant. Yes, of course. Since 2009, we have a national policy and strategy for only and only WHO pre-qualified insecticide of pre-qualified manufactured at the recommended strength and formulation will be used on the country. Even not the equivalent will not be promoted in the country. And what the steps taken by the government? Yes, of course, every year, every quarterly, we are sending the letter to the provinces, all the partners, that this is the national strategy and policy for the procurement of the insecticide, for use of the insecticide. So government, as a national program, we are very much conscious about the quality of the insecticide which are used in the country. So the national program doing its level best job to support the provinces as well as the other partners to use and promote only and only WHO pre-qualified insecticide of the pre-qualified manufacturer. So there was one question I read from the, and because it's a question directly to the government, so that's why I responded immediately on this question. Thank you.
No, and we're grateful for that, Dr. Mukhtar. Thank you for that. Inigo, you had your hand up?
Yes. It was because I have seen a question regarding the presentation, saying in some slides you could see that there was some overdosing and some underdosing values, and if that was due to the use of Smartlight still, or it was some more training needed for that operator. I just wanted to point it out that those figures were from operators that were measured without using the Smartlight, just to show some not such a good application results. So those values were just to show an example of how we can help to improve those figures. And once you start using the Smartlight, it's not very usual and common to find this kind of results. But if you find them, you can have a dialogue with the operator, and many times you can know the reason. If this kind of results are maintained in the time, probably you have identified an operator that have difficulties with the spraying technique and needs more training. But sometimes very punctually can be because there were some reasons due to other circumstances. So just to let you know that those figures were an example of not using the Smartlight.
Thank you, Inigo. So I'm conscious we're now well over time, but I'm going to ask this question. It relates to a comment made here by Jeffrey He, who makes a comment on the fact that LLINs by themselves, are really struggling to, we've seen the plateauing. And there was that classic publication by Bhatt et al. In 2015, where they showed that from 2000 to 2015, there was a 68% reduction of clinical cases solely due to the use of bed nets. And if you add the impact of IRS, it adds another 13% to reduction of clinical cases of malaria. So collectively, LLINs and IRS accounted for 81% of reduction in cases of malaria between 2000 and 2015. And the smaller percentage of IRS is not because it has less impact, it's because less was used. The whole world was funding and supporting distribution of LLINs, whereas fewer countries and programs were using IRS. And if you had a 50-50% use of LLINs and IRS, it would be very interesting to see. My bet would be that IRS would even make a bigger impact on malaria case reduction than LLINs. It's just it costs more. So, you know, budgets and so on work in favor of the use of LLINs. So Jeffrey is making the case that LLINs by themselves, you know, are really battling to reach elimination, and you know, it needs to be supplemented, and that PNG and Solomon Islands and so on account for the vast majority of the cases in the Western Pacific, and it would be good if in the specific instance of PNG, Solomon Islands, they could supplement the use of LLINs with IRS. Who's going to pay? Is there anybody out there that would be willing to support the use of IRS in those areas of Asia Pacific where malaria is no longer going down, it's actually going up? The other question I wanted to raise is much of the transmission occurring in places like Papua New Guinea and many other parts of the world is due to outdoor biting. So what about outdoor residual spraying? I must confess, I haven't really done a very in-depth literature search, but I'm aware of one study on the Thai-Myanmar border where outdoor residual spraying was proven to be highly effective in reducing vector populations and case incidents. Does anyone of you or anybody in the audience have anything to say about outdoor residual spraying as a means to address this very serious and increasing problem of outdoor biting? Any comments from anybody?
I have seen.
Sorry, Manuel, please. No, please, Manuel, go ahead. Then I will.
Manuel, please go ahead.
Final comment. Yeah, please.
I have seen not outdoor residual spraying, but I have seen it labeled as barrier treatments.
That's slightly different, but
not
okay.
Quite,
yeah,
not quite the same thing. But yeah. I'm not aware of any outdoor residual spraying done in my area.
Yeah, Dr. Mukhtar.
Yeah, Leo, this is very important question and the aspect of the malaria outdoor transmission. That's why I, as in my presentation, mentioned that we are going to have a sub-thematic group of outdoor biting, because after the deployment of the bed net on a large scale, there is a change in the feeding behavior of the mosquitoes globally. There are many countries who are after deployment of the LL in large scale, the mosquito behavior is outdoor biting. So that's why the outdoor biting and outdoor malaria transmission is getting worse and worse year after year. And many countries are reporting. For outdoor transmission, the outdoor residual application of the insecticide, this is very tricky question, because the outdoor mean that the areas which are open to sunlight are open places where the insect, because the indoor insecticide mean whether it should be what should I say, that it should be protected from direct sunlight to become decomposed. So the outdoor biting and the use of iris can to be taken for the control of the malaria. So if there is outdoor biting, we should definitely first we are to decide which housing structures are the residential structures which will provide the resting place for the mosquitoes. So that's why I am very much conscious about the answer of this question, the use of the iris, outdoor iris, use of insecticide for the control of outdoor biting. So we have to first decide number of parameters. What are the resting places in the area where the outdoor biting is going on? Either is it directly outdoor mean bushes, trees are resting place, and how we can treat it? Or there are some places where the farmers and other people take rest during the off hours, and they get bitten by the mosquito and the malaria transmission. So this is a very tricky question, and we have to be very careful for the CN making for the use of the outdoor residual spraying. Over.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Dr. Mukhtar. So in my own mind, I'm thinking about the slightly darkened, shadowed overhang of the roof. That angle formed between the roof and the vertical wall that is shaded, and also, in particular, animal pens where you have cattle, pigs, or so on sheltering. And by themselves, they're a major source of attraction for zoophilic vectors. I'm not talking about bushes, shrubs, trees, and so on. That's the last thing in my own mind that should be sprayed. And also, surfaces exposed to the sun, quite aside from the fact that the sun UV rays will break down the product. It's also those aren't the areas where the vectors will rest. They don't like resting in the sun. So it's the shaded areas under the eaves and animal pens, etc. But Dr. Mukhtar, there was also a question relating to use of IRS in tents. How effective? Can you just say something about the use of spraying, tarpaulin indoors, etc.? What's your experience with that, Dr. Mukhtar?
Yeah, this is very important question regarding the first. Just add to your first point that yes, if there is a shaded places and there are the stable structure, we can do the IRS to control this type of outdoor biting. So this is my additional point to your previous. Regarding the treatment of the tents for the IRS, yes, in 2010 when we developed the first guideline to respond as an emergency response when there was a floods and people were living in the tents. We suggest that we can do the IRS in this tent, but tent should be it depends upon the material. If it's a plastic like terpene which cannot absorb the water as well insecticide, that is useless to the IRS because it will not insecticide will not stay on the surface. But if it is a cotton based material like what we call the jeans, like clothes, thick clothes, coarse clothes, yes, we can do the IRS, but we will have to be very careful while we'll uninstall the tents. So in national guideline of 2010, which we first time developed for the treatment of the tents through the IRS, keeping the material of use for the tents.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. Manuel, you have your hand up.
Yes, and listening to the conversation, outdoor IRS is done in South America for Chagas vector control.
Where do they spray? What do they spray?
And they spray all these external surfaces of houses, pens, wood piles, anything that would hold or house a kissing bug.
Yeah, presumably with an emphasis on the areas closer to the ground, lower areas, not really the higher areas.
Especially in areas that are, animal pens and wood piles and even debris that are close to a house.
Yeah,
where the kissing bugs can stay and have easy access to a house.
Yeah, very good example of targeting different vectors. So we're going to pop up the poll in a few seconds. Dr. Mukhtar made a comment here. IRS is not more costly than a human life. True, but tell that to a donor. I wanted to give one last opportunity to our audience members. Anybody that wants to raise a vocal, verbal question, now's your time. Just unmute yourself and talk to us, please. Wulan, can you put up the poll? Mohammed Bala Masu, please. And then after that, Dr. Joshi, and we'll cut it off after that. So Mohammed, please activate yourself. And
thank you very much, Doctor.
no problem. Please go ahead, Mohammed. You're very welcome. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm speaking from Nigeria, and my direct question is, as Dr. Mukhtar indicated that RS is less costly than human life. For instance, in Nigeria, where we have one of the largest burden of malaria in the world, and we have seen effectiveness of IRS, but it has been consistently being, will I say, undermined or knocked out whenever we are making proposals to WHO funders like Global Funds, PMI, and all of that. And consistently, we have seen the use of only VEDNet as a means of vector control. So what are other measures that can be used to also demonstrate to funders that the use of IRS as other means of vector control will contribute significantly to the reduction of malaria body? Thank you.
Mohammed, I share your frustration. Believe me, my friend. And Nigeria, of course, sits with a massive problem with malaria. So, you know, the bottom line, I suspect, Global Fund, WHO, and so on, there's not enough money to start off with. There's insufficient funds available for malaria control. So with what little funds you have available, you have to make your dollars stretch the furthest. And the best return on investment is, unfortunately, you know, acquiring LLINs or ITNs. So, you know, it's an economic reality, very unfortunately. There have been many studies, Mohammed, I'm sure you're aware of it, in Africa that have shown the high levels of efficacy of IRS in reducing malaria incidence, better results than LLINs. It's the money that talks, Mohammed. Not sure if anybody else wants to comment on the observation by Mohammed.
I'm going to say a politically incorrect statement.
I know.
Which is,
okay, yeah.
I'm known for that.
Good for you.
And I disagree with you in a way, Leo.
Okay.
That there is money. We have been spending, we meaning the world, has been spending at least $1 billion. That's a one with 9 or 9 zeros attached to it. Okay. A year for the last 12 to 13 years. We're doing the same thing and malaria keeps going up. It's time to do something different. There is not, it is, in my opinion, it is not a matter of not having money. It's a matter of redistributing that money to do something a little different so that to see if we have an impact. And I disagree that we need to keep pumping money. And the number was what, 3 billion mosquito nets in Africa, and malaria keeps going up. Come on, you know, it's time to do something a little different. With regards to dengue, with regards to dengue, Fred Soper wiped out dengue from South America way back in 1980. And here we are going back to dengue, and we can't figure out what to do. Come on, it's been done before, we can do it again.
Yeah, and he also wiped out Anopheles gambiae, an entire species.
And yellow fever and all the other things.
So it's not through lack of precedence. There are examples that abound. It takes exceptional individuals, leadership, government willingness, and the funding. So you say the funds are available. That's an interesting observation. But lots of food for thought there. Thank you for that comment. Anybody else? Yes, there was a second person that raised their hand. Please Dr. Joshi, welcome aboard. Nice to see you. Please go ahead, Dr. Joshi. Dr. Joshi, you may still be muted. I can't see, but please go ahead when you're ready. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you, Dr. Joshi. Dr. Joshi, unfortunately, we can't hear you. I'm going to allow one more question by Ross Hutton. Ross, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, good evening and morning to everybody. Thank you. I'd like to ask a question that's probably about a decade old now, around just the Global Fund, which obviously funds most of the partners and countries that are on this call, about the current data. I mean, I'm sitting here in Solomon Islands, now working for WHO and kind of bound by WHO regulations. But we've seen experiences with IRS successes in many parts of the world, but we're yet to sort of see transition from Global Fund on how they fund their programs. And so just looking at update of data to Global Fund and how they can support more real-time data to the specific countries.
Yeah. So, yeah. Does anybody want to try and respond to that one? I mean, I'm not sure. Sorry, my mind diverted. I was starting to think about other things. Ross, thank you, and good luck with your work with WHO in Solomons. We wish you well. That's a very sincere wish. Nice to meet you. IRS, of course, is self-funded by several governments in Southern Africa with huge success. South Africa notably, and if it wasn't for the importation of cases from Zimbabwe and Mozambique into South Africa would have achieved elimination long ago. A very impressive indoor residual spray program that is being conducted there in Namibia, Botswana, several other Southern African nations that shows, and it's self-funded. That's why they do it. They don't rely on Global Fund funding, etc. So they have the ability to switch from bed nets to IRS, which is extremely effective. So anybody with any comments for Russ? Dr. Joshi, give it one more try. All right. Manuel, I think you had your hands up.
This is my second politically incorrect statement.
Love it.
My experience in many indoor residual spray campaigns is that the argument from those saying that we need to do IRS is something like, how difficult can it be? Just go ahead and spray. And that is the wrong position to take. IRS is a sum of a lot of parts, and it needs to be conducted in the best possible way, because failure is not an option. To paraphrase Fred Soper, failure is not an option. We either have glorious victory or we're doomed to failure. Okay, and these campaigns, all of them, integrated vector management campaign, any mosquito control campaign, needs to be organized and structured in a way that utilizes the available resources to the best of their ability. Okay, and it has to be documented, everything from the start to the end, and the post-mortem analysis needs to have all the details. And I believe, again, that when many of the funders don't understand or don't appreciate that these campaigns are complex, okay, and that these campaigns are complicated, but they have a significant impact where they are implemented correctly.
Yeah, thank you for that sobering remark, Manuel. But let me assure you, as a South African, I am very well aware of the complexity of an IRS campaign and everything that goes with that. So I didn't make my statement very lightly. The fact is, IRS is being implemented to great effect in multiple Southern African states. And it just struck me now, I suddenly remembered that there's this company, it's a commercial company, Goodbye Malaria, that is operating in southern Mozambique with huge success, solely relying on IRS. And in fact, that's the exception. It also strikes me now that program is actually funded by Global Fund, if I remember correctly. So there's the interesting anomaly and exception because of the cross-border elements involved and so on. But IRS can work even as the sole intervention if done properly and thoroughly, as you suggest, Manuel. So I think we must now throw in the towel. It's been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'd like to thank, on behalf of the audience, I'd like to thank our panelists. I'd like to thank our audience. What a wonderful group of people with strong interest, wonderful questions. I apologize that we weren't able to get to all the questions raised, just ran out of time. I'd like to thank our technical team, Dr. Porn, Wulan, Popo. Thank you so much for your work in the background to enable this webinar. And to all of you, sincere thanks. We hope to have another webinar in June. But in the meantime, can I ask you just to tick some of these boxes in the poll that should be on the screen now? It kind of helps us to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and where we should improve, etc. Manuel, Dr. Mukhtar, Inigo, very grateful for your participation. It's been a
Pleasure.
Thank you for that. I hope you manage to fall asleep soon, Manuel. Good luck to you.
You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much.